Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Vestanland. This is episode 26, and as I mentioned in the previous episode, I am moving back towards the main city of Nyrstad in order to create two custom bridges here, one for the rail line and one for the highway network. These connect directly back into the kind of more rural highways that I detailed in the last episode, and sort of really makes the whole connection between Nyrstad and the mainland of the country a lot more realistic looking. And yeah, it also sets up some really exciting projects in the future. You'll see at the end of the episode, I just sort of set the stage for a really iconic bridge between the island that the city sits on and the kind of, at this point, completely forested island that is north of it. I was originally planning on building that out in this episode, but I decided I wanted that to be more the focus of its own episode. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Anyway, in this particular video, I am reworking a lot of this interchange that I built a while back now. I decided I wanted to have the rail corridor running sort of at grade through here. I'm imagining the rail line has probably existed a lot longer. It was probably built earlier than the highway interchange, so it makes sense that it would be at ground level. It also makes sense that the rail bridge, which I'll get to in a bit, was probably a little bit closer to the water. Again, it's older, and it made more sense to sort of have the highway more elevated and the rail line a little bit lower down. I also had to do a lot of work with the pillars. I sort of neglected this when I built the interchange originally, partially because I knew I was going to probably have to rework some of it. But yeah, I went through and I deleted some of the pillars that just don't look good, or clipping into the tracks or other roads or whatever. Just sort of cleaning up some things on that front was really helpful. And yeah, sort of leads me into actually building the bridge. I originally was going to try to use this network, and obviously it comes with it's from New Jersey in the United States, and it has the American rail network on it. So I was just going to splice it into the existing rail line, but I didn't really like the way it looked. I thought it was too low to the water, and obviously this is not going to be the main shipping route, so the clearance isn't that important. I thought it would look better to have a truss bridge like this, kind of encasing the rail line and kind of more extending above the water rather than going closer to it. So I decided to make my own bridge out of these truss bridge buildings, converting them to PO. So I get them exactly where I wanted them. You'll see I eventually turned them black, and I think it looks really good. I had to make sure there's just enough clearance for the trains to get through realistically, and I also decided to include a footbridge for pedestrians or cyclists who want to go across. This is I mentioned this in the previous video, but I want to have a pedestrian trail like this that theoretically you could take throughout the whole country. It's not connected right now, but as we go and as we build more towns and cities, make sure to have this kind of pedestrian highway like thing, kind of factoring into the builds as we go forward. As you can see, this the black really pops against the kind of bright blue of the water. It looks really good, I think. Having the pedestrian path and the rail line right next to each other also looks good. You'll see I'll extend the pedestrian path kind of through the interchange. Again, kind of just like being parallel to the rail line. Is probably, maybe I'm imagining the pedestrian path was probably built relatively recently. It was probably, government probably used some of the right of way from the rail line and converted it to the pedestrian path. Now I'm adding these pillars. Again, they're procedural objects. They're not obviously functional anyway, but they are super important for the realism of the bridge. Again, using procedural objects just to size them perfectly, extending them into the ground, just so sort of basic things. I don't want to have these massive stones just kind of floating in the water, because that wouldn't make any sense. Um, and yeah, I'm really happy. This bridge it was pretty simple at the end of the day to put it together, but I think it is super impactful for the realism of the city. It looks really cool. This is what I was talking about with the pedestrian path kind of extending through. Um, and yeah, eventually I don't really connect it up to anything in particular. It kind of just like dumps out onto a surface road. I think that's okay. It looks pretty good. It does the job. And yeah, now I'm adding a few of the small details to the bridge. These catenaries. I had to convert one of these, the one closer to the pedestrian trail, to PO, just so I could kind of squeeze it down a little bit, make sure it wasn't clipping into the fence. Again, I feel like that would be a bit of a safety concern. So yeah, I just sort of, shifted things around, customized it, and then yeah, copied and pasted throughout the rest of the bridge. This is another one of those things where I'm not by any means an expert on how this would work in the real world. I try my best to like go on Google Maps and get sort of, get an idea of how these things look. But yeah, if there's something slightly off, I mean, and you're an expert, feel free to tell me about it. But the most important thing is that it looks fairly realistic and it looks like it makes sense, which I think this does. Now moving on to building the abutments for the bridge. You'll see I do this for both the rail bridge and the highway bridge. I decided to use this stone wall for the rail bridge. Again, I'm imagining it's more historic, a little bit older. So I think the stone wall kind of fits for that. You can see I sort of have this pedestrian path kind of right up against the rail tracks, and then it kind of like peels away. And right now kind of just goes into like some farmland, but down the line there'll probably be something interesting that I can do with that. I'm not really sure yet, but we'll figure it out. By the time we get to the end of the episode, you kind of have these three networks. You have like the highway, the rail line, and the pedestrian path. Obviously over the water, they're kind of all parallel to each other, and then like they kind of all fan out on the mainland, which is kind of an interesting effect. Again, you'll see that at the end of the episode. And back to what I'm doing on screen right now. This abutment was a little bit more challenging because the rail line had to kind of dip down a little bit once it got to the land, and just to fit under the highway ramps that I had built again a while back. I kind of had to fiddle with it a little bit more. But again, having these abutments is super crucial, obviously in real life, but also in terms of the realism of this build. Just so you can see me here kind of like filling in some gaps with the surface network, just to get everything kind of squared away. I love seeing the trades going back and forth on the bridge. It looks super, super good. One last thing I do here is I add these kind of anchor points, you could say, for the end of the steel trusses. I thought it'd be, just look kind of weird having them floating above the wall a little bit, so I kind of had a place where they would at least theoretically be anchored to in real life. That's that bridge. I was sort of expecting it to take a little bit longer, but again, I'm not going to complain about things coming together a little bit more simply than I was expecting. You can see this is where I was just running that path through, just kind of haphazardly, but effectively at the end. And now I can move on to the highway bridge. This one is a little bit, it's not necessarily as interesting structurally, in the sense that it's not like I can't imagine this would be like an iconic, landmark for the city or anything. It's kind of just your typical highway bridge. It's going to be held up with just some some massive concrete pillars. But actually building it was pretty interesting in terms of getting this double-decker look going. That's something I knew sort of right from the start I wanted to have. It kind of made sense when I was building the interchange, because there was such a condensed area of land. I knew I needed to have this bridge coming in at two different levels just to make that interchange a little bit more compact. But then I also knew that I had to have it sort of transition fairly seamlessly into the surface highway on the mainland. That was an interesting balance to have to strike. I think I do a pretty good job here. It comes together pretty well. Again, I had to cover up some of the voids and clipping and stuff like that with a few of these concrete retaining walls. But yeah, once I get those in, it looks pretty good. I use a lot of, it's not necessarily shown on screen, but I use a lot of the network multi-tool slope function just to make sure the grades are looking fairly realistic. That's sort of the reasoning behind why I changed up the layout of the interchange to put the rail line at the bottom, just because I knew I wanted to have the rail line be around like 1-2% grade, and I realized that was going to be impossible to have it sort of transition smoothly from the ground to the mainland without having a bridge that was like really high up in the air and wouldn't look good. So yeah, that was what I was thinking there. As you can see over the bridge, I have the red bus only lanes. I use Traffic Manager to make those work within game. I think it looks really cool. Just again, both like it looks pretty realistic, and it also just looks really interesting in terms of having that kind of that bright red color, kind of interspersed with all the kind of blandness of the highway. And yeah, these are the kind of big pillars that I was talking about. Obviously, when I sort of first kind of initially built this area, I built a similar thing out of procedural objects, but I didn't put a ton of thought into it. These ones look a little bit better, I think. Again, I sort of made sure to use sort of to integrate it into the two different levels a little bit better, which looks more realistic and more interesting, I think. And yeah, having that kind of squared away, I again kind of just readjusted a little bit of the terrain around here, kind of putting more of the ramps at ground level, usually by moving the ground to suit the ramps more than the other way around. But yeah, in terms of realism, you wouldn't have probably as many viaducts as I had originally, so it made sense to put a few more of those ramps on ground level. And this is what I was talking about adding these different pillars. Obviously, when you place down an elevator in this game, it automatically spawns the pillars, which is great usually. But when you're building complicated things like this, they can clip into each other. And in real life, when you have situations like this, when there's multiple layers of roads and rail lines and paths and stuff like that, engineers have to get creative with placing these pillars so that they don't interfere with other rail lines or whatever. And that's what I had to do here, using a couple of different widths and converting some of the pillars to procedural objects, just so I could kind of get them in the exact areas I wanted to, while still making sure I had enough clearance for cars and trains to get through without ramming into the ramp above them. I also did some work on the area here with the where the bus expressway, the rail line are kind of all running into their respective like terminal stations. I don't show a ton of the work here just because it was super tedious, but I did end up connecting the mainline rail into the rail yard successfully. It kind of took a long time to get the networks to cooperate with me, but once I got it, it looked really good. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think you actually end up seeing that at all in the episode, but that was sort of a good practical thing that I got to work, and allows for the trains, which you will see, to run smoothly, which is good. Again, I mentioned network multi-tool for the slope tool function, but I also used it to get these retaining walls parallel to the ramps, again, to cover up the clipping and just to make it look more realistic, again, to have more of these kind of embankments and like grounded segments rather than having everything elevated with viaducts. Again, that's something I was sort of conscious of, and I didn't want to have too many just ridiculous looking viaducts flying around. There still are. There's sort of there's that one that goes over the whole thing that looks pretty crazy, but I think it's all right if it's just the one. This is a part of the city that I feel like I probably will have to come back to at some point. This kind of area between the rail line and highway and the coast. I imagine there'll probably be some kind of park there. Yeah, it's not really high on the list of future projects, mainly because in this you'll see this a little bit later, but when I build the bridge on the north side of the island, that's going to set us up to build two really important projects in the near future. One of those is an airport, which I'm imagining is going to sit on some sort of reclaimed land, kind of jetting off into the void, if you will. The other project is a big cargo port. Obviously, we've built some coastal areas in the city that are have some old like wharves and stuff. I'm imagining that sort of marina area, yeah, on the central waterfront in Nyrstad was probably the old port. It's sort of been converted to a park with some residential and like hotel buildings. But yeah, I'm imagining that one of the next projects it's probably going to take a while is to build just sort of a massive cargo port, again, kind of on that northern island. I'm imagining the sort of hard to describe, I guess, but I'm imagining that the cargo port will be kind of more in the bay area, whereas the airport will probably be more onto like the ocean side, just so I feel like that'll be a little bit easier in terms of the scale, and probably because of the realism too. It would make sense to have the port area kind of in the kind of calmer waters, if you will. Anyway, that's getting ahead of myself. In terms of the detailing on the highway, you saw me add those sound barriers, which are super useful. Adding any kind of fence or anything like that is always super worthwhile in terms of detailing. One exciting thing that I got to use here are these decorative node cover networks that Cluse released recently on the workshop. Obviously, these concrete highways are super effective, but they do have these. One of the big problems with them was that they had the nodes were just completely blank and didn't have the same texture as the rest of the road, which wasn't super realistic. But with these new assets that Cluse released, again, shout out to him. He does so much good work over on the workshop. It makes it a lot easier to detail these types of intersections effectively, and I was able to use them here, which is cool. There's still obviously a little bit of this sort of texture that's not the same as the road, but I just sort of used intersection marking tool to create a filler to kind of extend the median out into the intersection, and it ended up working really well. I'm really happy with how this little roundabout turned out. I did some off-camera work with Traffic Manager to manage the sort of where the vehicles were going a little bit. Obviously, it's not perfect. You can see them all kind of using one lane, especially in that shot right there. But yeah, the traffic AI, as we know in this game, is not perfect. It's far from it. So you kind of just have to deal with cars all going in one lane for no apparent reason sometimes. Yeah, that's all right. This is another thing. I talked about this a lot in the last episode, but these custom highway signs are obviously super important in real life, and they're also super cool to be able to use in the game. Just having the opportunity to create cities and then have a network like this where you can build these connections between them. It's super rewarding. I really enjoyed putting these signs in kind of at the end of building a project like this. You saw me there just kind of, again, use the color rectangle feature within the procedural objects mod to cover up one of the areas of or one of the arrows for the roundabout to suit my needs a little bit here. Maybe down the line there'll be this will be like a full roundabout with the fourth entrance, but as of now there's nothing up there. Who knows? This it's really cool putting in details like this just because it sort of gives me an idea of where future projects could go. It gives me inspiration, and it's super rewarding, as I said. I guess I'll take this opportunity to thank you guys for watching the video up until this point. It means a lot to me. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. It means a lot. It's always cool to see more people involved with the series. I get back to last thing I do in this little area anyway is just sort of adding a few nature details, adding some grass and bushes and stuff. Again, these are areas that there aren't going to be people walking, in this little area between the highways. So it's going to be kind of overgrown. And there's also kind of weird things with the terrain that it's usually a good idea to kind of cover up with some bushes. You also see, I add a little bit of a barrier here. Again, I don't want cars flying off into the rail line. You'll notice that the ground color here is like super bright yellow. Yeah, I'm changing it right now. That's kind of just left over from when this area was just kind of like the generic farmland that I built into the map. But yeah, I changed that around. It makes a little more sense to have the kind of default grass color here. And then yeah, I added the quad line catenaries, which I talked about before, but they look super cool. You can kind of see there what I'm talking about with the different networks kind of like spreading out over as they sort of enter the mainland. They go to different places, which again was a really cool effect. I was happy with how it turned out. And yeah, do a little bit of final detailing, adding fences, some breakwater rocks, stuff like that. The next thing I'll move on to, you'll see in a bit, is creating this really cool looking bridge on the north side. You see I'm moving all the way over there now. And yeah, I was originally, as I said earlier in the video, I wanted to kind of finalize this whole thing in this episode was my original plan. But I decided, you'll see that this is going to be a much bigger project than just kind of something at the end of the episode. But I did want to get it started just to kind of set the stage for some future projects. Obviously, you saw I kind of switched to the contour lines view. This is kind of just an artifact of when I was building the map. I was imagining that this area here was probably like a deeper channel, and that's why there needs to be a more impressive bridge here than the area we were working on before. You can see I'm stretching out the all these different networks. There's obviously the highway. This right here is the metro line, which I'm imagining it's going to run to both the airport and the cargo harbor. You'll see I connected to, again, this is kind of just a temporary measure to connect it to the underground segment there. That's something I'll get back to in the next episode. But yeah, I'm also connecting. This is kind of a little bit of I'm not really sure exactly what's going to go here, but this adding the more like the regional rail line. I don't know exactly how I'm going to connect that up to the rest of the network, but we'll see. Maybe there's a tunnel project in the future that connects that regional rail line to the airport or something like that. Remains to be seen. The last thing I do is, again, using Network Multi-Tool to create these loops. It was a little bit hard. Originally I got them kind of crisscrossed here, but nothing move it, and no controller can't fix in terms of splicing everything together. Again, this is very much like just getting an idea of the scale of this project. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more to build in this area with the stuff I mentioned, but also I'm imagining there's probably like a metro station on this island here. Maybe there's a little bit of a smaller city center on this side of the island, something like that. But yeah, this when I built the map originally, having this area here, the interesting geography was always going to be allow me to do some pretty cool things, which I'm excited about getting to in the future. You can see the bridge I have chosen, at least temporarily, is this really cool asset, the Oresund Bridge. And yeah, I sort of just slide it in here, and yeah, that hopefully gives you a sense of where the series is going. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.